Good morning. It's Monday, June 3rd. The multi-front war in the Middle East is now 241 days old. I'm Jonathan Schanzer, Senior Vice President for Research at Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Welcome back yet again to the FDD Morning Brief. It was a tough weekend. Lots of action in the north of Israel, a spate of Hezbollah attacks, including some direct hits. The IDF hit back at the Iran-backed terror group, and Hezbollah felt those strikes from what I've read. But the entire thing is just unsustainable for Israel. I don't have any deep analysis for you today on this topic. I'll only just say that the Israelis of all political persuasions are calling for the government to finally address the northern front. This could be the escalation that we feared. And this call comes amidst the wake of the president's proposed ceasefire deal on Friday. We'll talk about that deal momentarily. But before we do, a quick shout out to my colleague Rich Goldberg for hosting on Friday, and another shout out to Morgan Ortegas, who served up some fresh observations after returning from a trip to Israel. That's what we strive for here on the FDD Morning Brief. Our guest this morning is Ambassador Joshua Zarka. Ambassador Zarka is a longtime friend of FDD who served at the embassy here in Washington before quietly crisscrossing the Middle East in pursuit of normalization deals, then holding the Iran nuclear file at the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Today, he's the Israeli ambassador to Paris. We're going to talk to him about all of those files and perhaps a few others this morning. Get ready for a wide-ranging and informative conversation. I want to see both Gazans and Israelis live in peace. I want to see the hostages returned. I want the war to end, but I doubt any of that will happen as a result of President Biden's ceasefire proposal on Friday. If you want to give Biden the benefit of the doubt, his speech was a Hail Mary to curb the chaos. Worst case, it was old wine in a new bottle. It was a repackaging of Hamas-friendly proposals floated in recent months. Then there was the disjointed response from Jerusalem. I'm still not sure if the Israelis approved this thing before it was announced, and I still don't know where they stand right now. Bibi looks like he's losing control. This kind of confusion only emboldens Israel's enemies. And speaking of Israel's enemies, anyone else notice that the State Department issued a joint statement with Qatar about this ceasefire deal? Someone explain to me why the Hamas-funding Qataris are still in the picture. For that matter, someone explain why the Egyptians are involved if they've been operating those underground tunnels between the Sinai Peninsula and Gaza that armed Hamas. Heck, I even question why the U.S. is a broker. The president clearly doesn't care if this thing ends on good terms. He just wants it to end before the Democratic Convention in August. I'm not saying diplomacy is the wrong approach. It's obviously optimal, but I don't like the motivations of the players, any of them, and I don't like the Israeli confusion either. Now for your headlines. Headline 1, former Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad is trying to make a comeback. Ahmadinejad, as Michael Medved used to call him, registered as a presidential candidate on Sunday. Elections are scheduled for June 28th. Ahmadinejad is the highest profile figure to throw his hat into the ring. During his time in office from 2005 to 2013, he made a name for himself as a Holocaust-denying, Israel-hating nutcase. Ahmadinejad famously called for Israel to be wiped off the map, and during a speech at Columbia University in 2007, he insisted that homosexuality didn't exist in Iran. P.S. Ahmadinejad is sanctioned here in the United States for human rights abuses and for facilitating the wrongful detention of American citizens in Iran. So can he win? Most Iranian watchers say no. Iran's 12-person Guardian Council, which answers to Ayatollah Khamenei, must approve Ahmadinejad's candidacy. The Guardian Council disqualified him from running in both 2017 and 2021 during those presidential elections. I still chuckle when the Iran lobby in Washington says that the Islamic Republic is a democracy. Yeah, right. Headline 2, Chinese President Xi Jinping addressed Arab leaders at the China-Arab State Cooperation Forum in Beijing, where Xi called for an international Middle East peace conference. As if the Middle East wasn't screwed up enough already, Xi Jinping thinks he can help. He pledged to provide nearly $70 million in aid to Gaza. I'm sure none of that money would go to Hamas, right? He also pledged $3 million to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, an outfit only slightly more corrupt than the other UN agencies that China controls. And in a transparent play for power and influence, she also pledged to boost cooperation with the Arab world in areas like trade, energy, and artificial intelligence. Great. This is all bonkers. China is committing genocide against Muslim Uyghurs in Xinjiang. So the regime is super concerned about humanitarian issues, right? Especially the concerns of the Muslim world. Are you getting this? Also, China has a 25-year cooperation agreement with the Iranian regime, the very regime responsible for plunging the region into war. You'll have to pardon my skepticism here. What a joke. Headline 3, House and Senate leadership invited Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to address a joint session of Congress. Bipartisanship still exists in Washington, apparently. House Speaker Mike Johnson and his Democratic counterpart Hakeem Jeffries, as well as Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and his Republican counterpart Mitch McConnell, all signed the invitation. But the Democratic Party remains deeply divided over the war in Gaza. The invitation to Netanyahu was actually held up for weeks because Schumer, who called for Netanyahu's ouster in March, was ambivalent about extending a hand to Israel's embattled prime minister. Multiple Democratic lawmakers have already indicated that they will skip Netanyahu's address. Hey, Bernie, Ilhan, and AOC, don't let the door hit you on the way out. Netanyahu accepted the invitation to no one's surprise. In a social media missive, Netanyahu says he's eager to present the truth to American people and to the world about Gaza. The date of Netanyahu's address is TBD, but whenever this thing happens, Netanyahu will become the first world leader ever to address a joint session of Congress for the 4th time. He last spoke before both houses in 2015 in an effort to stop Obama's dangerous Iran nuclear deal. The only other world leader to address a joint session of Congress 3 times, the immortal Winston Churchill. All right, I'm now excited to introduce to you a truly accomplished Israeli diplomat. He's served in the Ivory Coast, Montreal, Geneva, Washington, and beyond. He's held some very sensitive files at the Foreign Ministry in Israel, too. Ambassador Joshua Zarka joins us today from Paris. I should note that he is not a political appointee, but rather a professional one, and professional he is. We're thrilled that he's agreed to join us live today on the FDD Morning Brief. Welcome, Ambassador Zarka.
Thank you. Hi, Jonathan. Hello, everybody. It's great to be with you.
Great to have you with us. Well, let's start with the news out of Paris, where you're based. Israel is apparently banned from taking part in a forthcoming arms expo. How much of a problem is this for Israel? How are we to understand the messaging coming out of Paris right now?
These are 2 different questions. It is an issue. It is a blow for the Israeli industry. We have invested quite a lot of money. I mean, the industry has invested quite a lot of money in participating, in preparing for the participation in that salon, which is one of the 2 most prestigious salons, arms salons in Europe. I'll be frank. We were completely surprised. We were astonished by the decision that had been taken by the French authorities to ask us or to request that we wouldn't be part of that show. It is a problem because of what has been invested. It is a problem because of the fact that basically, the deals that were supposed to be sealed during the salon are not going to be sealed during the salon. And it is an issue also from our point of view. We are perceiving that as a retreat in front of both the street pressure that is being put on different European capitals by pro-Hamas activists, as well as the fear of any kind of reaction, and clearly a wrong message when it comes to us fighting our war against Hamas.
Clearly. Well, let me just ask, I guess, about that broader mood that you referred to in Europe about this war. I know it's not overwhelmingly positive. We see lots of protesters chanting terrible things about your country on the streets of multiple European capitals. But is there some nuance here? I mean, do we see some daylight between the governments and the people, or are they succumbing to the pressure?
No, there is a very big difference, first of all, between what we are seeing on the screen, so what we are seeing in TV, and what the people of the different countries, and I'll speak now about the people of France, are actually feeling towards Israel. I mean, there have been some polls that have been made, and a large majority of French people are actually in favor of us continuing defending ourselves against Hamas and against all the atrocities that Hamas has done. And they believe, the French people, that we have the right to do what we are doing. Now, we have to bear into consideration that there is a mixture of very dangerous things that is happening at the same time, and troubling things. One is that, we are winning the war. The war is, we are taking care of Hamas more and more, and less of Hamas's forces are still existing. And there is a fear by some people that the fact that we are actually winning that war will force or will cause either the Iranians or Hezbollah to react to it. So that's a very first issue. We have to bear that in consideration. Second, when it comes to what's happening here in France, there are elections to the European Parliament, and some of the people that want to be elected to the European Parliament have chosen that the issue of the Israeli struggle against this terrorist organization that has done the most horrendous atrocities since the Holocaust, they have chosen this issue as a topic that they want to fight for, and they want to, as they want to represent the Palestinian cause, and are using us as a tool to gain some popular vote, and it's not working for them. So they are becoming more and more vocal and more violent, and that is causing some of the governments to be worried about it. So this is something that we need to take into consideration. Now there is daylight also, not only between the public and the demonstrators, but also between the governments and the demonstrators. I haven't heard anywhere that Israel has no right to defend itself against Hamas. Their request is that we do it in a certain manner. Unfortunately, they do not always understand that we are fighting, and it is a terrible, horrendous, terrible war, because of the fact that Hamas is embedded beneath the Palestinian population and have two layers of human shields. One is the Palestinians, the second is the hostages, and they are very cynically using that. And from their point of view, and they said it very openly, the more dead Palestinians they'll have, the better it will be. From our point of view, every non-involved civilian that is harmed or killed is a tragedy. And we are saying that also very openly, but it doesn't mean that we are going to stop fighting. And we are doing, us Israelis, us, the army, the IDF, we are doing everything in our power to minimize the humanitarian cost to that fight and to that war. And to be frank, if you look at the numbers, the very dry numbers, and it is terrible to look at a war in that way, but we must do that as professionals. If you look at numbers, if you compare all other urban fightings that have taken place in history, not long ago, in Raqqa or in Mosul and other places, our ratio, and we are not even, trying to say anything against the numbers that have been published by Hamas. Even if we were to accept the numbers that were published by Hamas, the ratio between involved and non-involved is 1-to-1, or maybe 1-to-1.2. The ratio in Mosul and in Raqqa was 1-to-4. So
or higher. I've heard it's higher, actually. I've seen some reports showing that it was like 9-to-1. I think Israel has done a remarkable job keeping those numbers low. Of course, you've got some tough critics out there, and I can only imagine how tough it is in Europe right now. Let me ask you on another topic. Until recently, you held the Iran nuclear file at the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Yes.
And it was a big file for you. I know you were a busy guy. How are we to understand where things stand right now? There's a lot going on at the IAEA. There's a lot of concern about Iran's nuclear progress.
Yes. So, funnily enough, in that field, I think that the Israeli position and the European position is closer than the Israeli position and the American position. That is surprising. And for different reasons, I'm not going to go into the why is this happening, but the fact is that Iran today is as close as it has ever been to having a nuclear weapon. from, in every nuclear weapon program, you have three elements. One is means of delivery, second is materials, and the third one is weaponization. So if you look at what's happening in every one of those, means of delivery, they have the capacity to deliver a payload of 1.5 tons, which is 3 warheads, to Europe, basically. So they have enough to strike us directly. They will need to do some fitting once they have the weapon, but they have the means of delivery. Second is materials. Well, materials is basically enriched uranium. They are a week to a week and a half away from having enough material for one bomb, and they are 2 months away from having enough material for a small arsenal of between 8 to 10 bombs, which is terrible. But it doesn't mean that they are 2 months away from having the bomb, because the third element is weaponization. And when it comes to weaponization, our assessment is similar to the American assessment. That means that they are something like 1.5 to 2 years away from having the bomb, from the moment they will make a decision to weaponize. The term is weaponizing. It's basically taking the uranium that they have enriched, which is in basically the form of gas, turning it to metal, and turning that metal into a bomb. That is a very difficult process that might take them between 1.5 to 2 years. And they have, to the best of our understanding, they have not yet made a decision to actually weaponize.
Let's hope that we're able to continue to deter them from doing so. Another topic, as you're a man who has worn many hats, I noted in journalist Barak Ravid's book, Trump's Peace, as he calls it, he mentions you as someone who spent some time in the Arabian Gulf cultivating ties with the moderate regimes of the region. So as you look now at the Gulf, how do you think those normalization deals that you helped to forge are holding up?
Actually, they are holding on much better than we expected. I mean, we always expected that they would hold up. If you remember, we had 2 normalization processes. We had one before the second Intifada, at the end of which we had Morocco, Tunisia, Qatar, and Oman having relations with us. And then they had that second process of normalization that we just mentioned. The first time that we had this normalization process, after the second Intifada or during the second Intifada, we were kicked out of these countries. And it ended in an unpleasant manner, let's put it like that. Us having no embassies or no offices. Today, we've been fighting this war, which is a terrible war, as I said earlier, for 7 months now. And there is no doubt in anybody's mind that we are doing tremendous work when it comes to fighting our enemies. And it is very difficult. It has been very difficult for some of the Arab countries to see our forces entering into Gaza and doing what we're doing. And still, the relations are holding. Now, I'm not going to say that they have not been, in a way or another, disturbed by it or influenced. The rate of developing the different files have not been influenced by the fact that we are fighting this terrible war. But it is holding, and that is very important. It is holding because I think that the countries have made a very strategic decision to go to peace with Israel. It was not an opportunity. It was not down of we have the opportunity to, for instance, since you mentioned that book and history, I'll give you a small scoop. Yes, you're surprised. The Qataris at the time were the first one that agreed to open an office. The reason they opened an office at the time was the deal was we'll organize a meeting in the White House for them, and they'll allow us to open an office. That was the deal. So that was an opportunistic deal from their point of view. It was not a strategic decision to actually go to peace with us.
Interesting.
Yes, I knew you liked it.
Yeah, I'm not sure I approve, but I certainly, I guess I understand it, right? This is how deals are made. Let me ask you one last question before I let you go. I know you're a busy man. I want to ask you about what's happening right now in the north of Israel. It certainly does not look like this conflict is contained. It looks like escalation is certainly over the weekend. And from what I'm hearing from different members of Knesset and former senior military officials, the way they're all describing it looks rather dire. Do you share that view? Do you think that we are heading toward a wider war on Israel's northern border?
You remember the atomic clock of the nuclear scientists describing it as midnight, the time in which we will, Third World War will or the nuclear catastrophe will happen. So we are half a minute to midnight. We are half a minute to midnight. Now, it is very important to understand that the Iranians and Hezbollah are using our northern border as a mean of pressure for us to accept immediately a ceasefire that will permit a continued existence of Hamas. There are other players also that are using the same, the fact that we are in a very difficult situation in the northern border, and they realize that we do not want to go with Hezbollah. We would rather find a diplomatic solution. These other players are also using the northern border and what's happening in the northern border and the tensions that we're experiencing in the north as a means of pressure against Israel to accept the deal. This is very bad news. But the fact is that as long as we will continue winning the war, the pressure will continue being increased by Hezbollah. This is the equation. They're doing what they're doing because they understand that soon enough, Hamas will cease to exist. And from their point of view, they want to do everything in their power to prevent that from happening, including going closer and closer to the edge of war, total war.
So it seems then that if Israel wants to ensure a victory in Gaza, then it needs to continue to sustain some of that aggression that is coming from Hezbollah in the north until they finish, and then perhaps from there move north. Well, we're going to leave it there. I want to thank you, Ambassador Joshua Zarka, for joining us live today from Paris on the FDD Morning Brief.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Another little scooplet here at the FDD Morning Brief. Here's what FDD has on tap for you today. FDD China Program Director Craig Singleton has a piece in The Hill examining the 50-fold increase in Chinese nationals attempting to illegally cross the Mexican border into the United States. Craig underscores that this not only places major pressure on America's national security systems, but potentially opens a gateway for China to exploit America's broader border challenges for nefarious purposes. Craig argues that a compassionate yet vigilant approach must be taken to aid genuine asylum seekers while mitigating threats posed by Beijing. My colleague Ivana Stradner is out with a new essay in The Telegraph for the paper's series that examines the consequences if Russia were to win its war against Ukraine. She explains how not giving Ukraine everything it needs to win this war will lead to other wars and yet others. Ukraine would be just the first domino to fall. If you haven't had enough of me today, I have a new piece up at Commentary Magazine examining how restrictive U.S. policies on Israel have given Iran and Hamas the time and space that they need to prepare deadly booby traps and IEDs, improvised explosive devices, to kill IDF soldiers in Rafah. We're already seeing indications of how U.S. policies are empowering Israel's enemies, and we're seeing an uptick of IDF soldiers killed on the Gaza battlefield. That's one to watch. Finally, mark your calendars for noon tomorrow. FDD is hosting a live stream event focused on Taiwan. It will feature CrowdStrike co-founder Dmitry Alperovich, whose new book, World on the Brink, examines how America can beat China in the race for the 21st century. He'll be joined by FDD's Mark Montgomery, Georgetown's Ivan Kanapathy, and Ellen Nakashima from the Washington Post. We hope you'll tune in. That's a wrap, folks. Read our expert analysis on our website, fdd.org. Read our quick takes on X at FDD, and support our work with a tax-deductible donation at fdd.org/invest. Tune in Wednesday for another terrific episode of the FDD Morning Brief. We're going to go outside our comfort zone a bit and bring on a Harvard student named Shabbos Kestenbaum. You may have seen him in the media in recent months. He'll talk to us about what's happening at Harvard Yard. Okay, thanks for joining, folks. I'll see you Wednesday. Until then, I'm Jonathan Schanzer signing off for FDD.